Today on Diabetes Connections Type 2, for the first time, you can buy a continuous glucose monitor over the counter, no prescription needed. This summer, we went from no CGMs available this way to now having 2 different brands. This week, we're talking about the Dexcom Stelo with the company's Chief Operating Officer, Jake Leach. We'll go through the features, the price, where you can actually get it, and what you should know before you start a CGM. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections Type 2. I am your host, Stacey Sims, and I'm always so glad to have you here. As many of you know, I have hosted a podcast about type 1 diabetes for almost 10 years, and we have been following the advances and changes in continuous glucose monitoring technology all that time. My son has used a Dexcom CGM for about 11 years now. He was diagnosed with type 1 at age 2. Back when he was diagnosed in 2006, the CGM technology, it wasn't ready for prime time, let's put it that way. And we waited until he was 9 years old to start using it, and it has certainly changed a lot since then. My husband has used the Abbott Libre on and off for about 4 years, I would say. My husband lives with type 2 diabetes. And Abbott is the other company I alluded to there in the opening tease, because they have also released an over-the-counter CGM this summer. We'll talk to them about that down the road. I hope there isn't a lot of assumed knowledge in this interview, but if you are interested in learning more, I'm going to link up information about the basics of CGMs and the episodes we've done in the past. If you're really interested in going back in the archives to kind of see where it was when, like I said, my son started way back when on something called the Dexcom G4 Platinum Pediatric, which didn't connect to anything, let alone a smartphone or an insulin pump. And you had to get not only a prescription, but you had to jump through hoops to get your insurance to cover it. Okay, well, we've come a long way. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about where we are now. The Dexcom Stelo is a device that you insert yourself at home, usually in the arm. It's very quick. Most people say it's painless, but a needle does go in and come out, leaving a wire behind. I will find a video or more information where you can see the insertion. And it stays on your skin for 15 days, and then you switch it out yourself. You just peel it off, throw it away, and put a new one on. It is $99 for 2 sensors, or $89 if you sign up for a monthly subscription. 2 sensors should last you a month. And it is available on Dexcom's website only right now. I think all you need to know going into this interview, because we talk about this a little bit, is that CGMs designed for people who do dose insulin have a lot more in the software. The actual hardware, the device, is the same, but there are many more alerts and alarms in, say, the software on your phone for a Dexcom G7 than a Dexcom Stelo. The other CGMs also communicate with insulin pumps to automate dosing and with insulin pens to help you make more informed decisions. My guest this week to talk about all this is Chief Operating Officer of Dexcom, Jake Leach. He joined me from Europe, where he was attending the European Association for the Study of Diabetes, or the EASD conference. We get to a few questions later on in the interview that are a bit more specific to type 1. But for the most part, I think this is going to answer a lot of your questions about this first over-the-counter CGM. When you get a diabetes diagnosis, you have a lot to think about and keep track of. Your supply company should help lighten your load, not add to it. That's why I'm so happy to talk about US Med. They hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, so you know they excel in customer satisfaction. US Med always ensures you have 90 days worth of supplies and provides fast, free shipping to your doorstep. It's great to know you don't have to constantly run to the pharmacy or think about ordering every week. US Med, your trusted partner in diabetes care. Your health, satisfaction, and peace of mind are their priority. Better service, better care. Learn more, go to usmed.com/Stacey. That's usmed.com/STACEY. Jake, welcome back. Hope your travels were good. We're catching up while you're in Spain.
Absolutely. Great to be here. We're here on the ground in Madrid at the EASD conference. Maybe it's a conference. We'll see.
Well, it's funny that you started with on the ground, because my first question, I just saw this headline this morning, and the headline is Dexcom's CGM system warned in outer space.
Yes.
What happened here?
we're pushing the frontier, it's actually a really exciting program where there's some researchers that wanted to study CGM use in space. And so there was a whole bunch of work done to qualify the product to be able to actually go up in the space capsule. And so that was completed. And so now it's actually on its way to space, in space now.
I could ask, we could do a whole episode on it, I'm sure, and maybe we will when they bring it back. What changes were made? Was it just to get it ready to withstand pressures and things like that? Or is it actually a different measurement?
No, it's the exact same product. It's actually the G6 product. It's the exact same product that we sell today. It was just there's a lot of work anytime you do anything in spacecraft or even on aircraft. There's a lot of testing that has to happen to ensure compatibility and that there's no issues. And so now that the device has cleared that, now it's going up in space and they'll study the physiology, the glucose dynamics of an astronaut.
Very cool. All right, we will definitely follow up on that. But you are here today really to talk about the launch of Stelo. Take us through the basics. You and I have talked about it before, but for those who are not familiar, this is Dexcom's over-the-counter product made for people who do not dose insulin. But take us through some of the basic features and pricing.
Sure, of course. So we're incredibly excited about Stelo because it is the first over-the-counter product in the United States, CGM product in the United States, first approved and first launched. So it's now available. It's available at stelo.com. It is a brand new product. It's based on our many years of accuracy, reliability, performance, ease of use in CGM, and it's built on the G7 hardware, but it is a completely different user experience. As you mentioned, it's really tailored for people who either have diabetes or pre-diabetes but aren't taking insulin. That's an important difference because those who, as you know, are on insulin need some of the hypoglycemia protection features that we have as part of G7, the urgent low soon alerts, the urgent low alert, all of that kind of protective feature is designed for insulin users or people who have hypoglycemia risk. The population that Stelo is designed for are not at risk for hypoglycemia. What their challenges are often is hyperglycemia and helping better manage their glucose, particularly in the high range. And so the product is designed to help really uncover and help people learn about how their current habits impact their glucose, bring the insights into how they can potentially change their habits to improve their glucose, ultimately trying to lower average glucose, lower A1Cs. And then it's a great tool also for basically showing what those healthy habits do and then helping confirm them and so people continue with those habits. There's nothing like seeing your own data to really bring light to the differences in how food can impact you as an individual. It's very personalized. Sometimes we're told, don't do this, don't do that. But when you actually see the impact, it really unlocks things. And we know that the majority of people who are going to use Stelo have never seen their glucose readings before, certainly never seen them continuously. And so it's going to be a whole new world for them to see about their physiology.
I have some questions about that. But before we go on, you had mentioned that Stelo does not give, as it sounds, does not give low alerts or alarms.
It does not. It does not have low alerts built in. It does have a really cool feature called Spike Detect that is designed to detect hyperglycemic excursions that are specifically, it's an algorithm that tunes itself to the individual because everybody's glycemic profiles are going to look a little different. And so it's designed to pick out the most impactful glycemic excursion someone has in a day. And it fine tunes itself as you wear the sensor over time. The idea there is help people understand what caused that excursion, the more meaningful glucose excursion. What food choice was it, or meal composition? There's so many things you learn about wearing a CGM, even if you don't have diabetes, around just how food impacts your body.
Can you tell us a little bit more when you say fine tune? What does that mean? Is there a learning capability built in here?
It does. So the idea is if you've got someone whose glucose, they have type 2 diabetes, they're just starting to use CGM and their glucose is quite high and they have a lot of large glucose excursions throughout the day as they're learning. We don't want to be highlighting every single glucose excursion for them. We want this to be a simple, approachable system. So the idea is let's highlight the most meaningful ones. The system kind of looks for, okay, what are the most impactful ones? And it starts to learn your glucose profile over time. Someone who has less glucose excursions, but is still very interested in learning about what causes the largest impact to their glucose readings. That one it'll fine tune and basically highlight their main excursions throughout the day. So the idea is let's make it a very useful feature no matter what your glucose dynamics look like, because the product is, it's over the counter. It's also the broadest indication for CGM ever. It's for all adults that don't take insulin. The actual indication for use goes well beyond diabetes, prediabetes. The design of the product was focused for folks who have type 2 and prediabetes, but we know that there's going to be a lot of users outside of that group. And we're really excited actually to continue evolving the platform and the software and understanding the user needs of the broader group, because we do feel that there's a real opportunity there for very broad use of CGM now that it's over the counter. The goal here was to get access for people to this technology that could benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm probably going to start wearing it just to see what goes on. I've never worn a CGM. Yeah, well, if I worked for Dexcom, I'd probably have a CGM for the last 10 years. But I've never worn one for many reasons I've shared before. But I think I'll probably do it just to kind of check out the system and see what it's like, and also to see what's happening with my glucose. But I'm curious, you've mentioned this very broad audience and how you want to kind of see how people use it, what they get out of it. Can you change? I assume since it's built on the G7 platform, you can change and adjust the software to read out whatever you all think is most valuable to these folks. Could you see changing some of the readout features if people say in this population, I'm having a lot of lows that I didn't realize, or I want something else? Can you change the software of it pretty easily?
As developers of the software, our intent is to continue to innovate on it and bring new features that are helpful for users. And even as of right now, the software is designed, it tailors itself. It asks you some questions when you're setting it up. Do you have diabetes? Do you have pre-diabetes? And so it sets the target range, the initial kind of default target range based on the way you answer those questions. And then you can always go in and adjust it if you want. So that was kind of our simple first approach to helping people set a target and then manage within that goal. But, over time, there's going to be a lot more here coming that continues to expand the benefit of the product.
Yeah, you could see lots of things. I mean, we don't have to go through the litany, but in addition to lows, although it's really funny, Jake, to try to divorce my brain from thinking this is tied to some kind of automated insulin system, right? It's not machine taking action. This is all for the user to have information from. But you could see someone who's going to take a medication saying, like, today I started this medication. Let's see what happens to my glucose. Or please watch out for this thing. I want to see a spike or even or whatever it is, because I've changed this behavior.
Yeah.
So you could definitely see changes coming.
Today, you can log those types of things into it. The Stelo app will automatically pull in, if you're using a device that tracks your sleep. So like an Oura Ring, Samsung Ring, or even some of the mattresses that track sleep. The Stelo app will actually pull that in, and it'll record it and keeps it inside the database. Also activity. So the number of steps actually gets pulled into that app too. As a user, if you wanted to, right, you can set it up. So then you can also kind of see how some of those things can impact glucose over time. And that's part of our goal, is to continue to enhance the insight algorithm to use some of that other data to help further improve the insights that we can give someone to help them try and achieve their goal.
Not that people with type 1 diabetes need more information. Some people feel overloaded already, but I'm sure some of my listeners heard that and say, can I loop my sleep and my walking into my G7? Any plans for that?
Yeah, activity is actually in G7 today. So you can loop your activity data right into G7. Sleep is definitely on the roadmap. I don't think we have it quite implemented on G7 yet, but it's coming soon. Yeah. But anything of the data that goes into either Health Connect on the Android platform or Apple Health on the Apple platform, that's the database that we use to draw the data in. There's all kinds of apps that can put data in there. There's even some that do nutrition. So we're also looking at that as an option to be able to pull data in through utilizing some of that feature set.
This might be a dumb question, but that never stopped me. Is that Apple Health integration, was that part of the Apple Watch changeover, or has that always been there, or was it there before?
Yeah, it's a great question. So those two aren't linked. So we've had Apple Health integration for quite a while, where our Dexcom CGM puts the CGM data into Apple Health to be shared with other apps that want to consume that data that the user authorizes. What's new for G7 was the ability to input the activity data. So that's fairly new. That came out earlier this year. And then the Apple Watch direct to Apple Watch integration, another super exciting feature that launched earlier this year it was another highly requested user feature that we were really excited to get out there just recently.
Great. Obviously, Abbott is out with their over-the-counter sensor as well. Let me just give you the floor. Make the case. What is different and better, in your opinion, about the Dexcom Stelo?
I think it starts with the accuracy, reliability, and performance of Dexcom. So the G7 platform is the most accurate sensor available. So I think it starts with that. And it's actually quite important. For accuracy and reliability is quite important in this user group. It's important for all users, but it's also important for users that have less glycemic variability, right? So if you've got somebody whose glucose doesn't change as much throughout the day as someone who's maybe insulin dependent, being able to suss out some of those insights, it's important to have highly accurate glucose data. So I think that's part of it. The other part is the feature set and the way that we've developed this app was 100% based on user feedback and our knowledge around how to develop easy to use products. We're incredibly excited about that. Also, the other case I'd make is we intend to innovate very rapidly. Frankly, Lingo's been out there for a while. This product with Stelo is brand new. We're seeing fantastic user feedback, and we're going to bring innovation very rapidly to it. I think our users of our G7 product have seen that since the launch, quite a bit of new capabilities coming out. We're going to do the same with Stelo and continue to enhance the feature set. If you're looking for innovation, Dexcom is the innovation leader in continuous glucose monitoring. We have so many firsts, including the first over-the-counter product approved and the first launch. I think that's what you're getting when you go with Dexcom.
One thing, and I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth here. One thing that's concerning about over-the-counter is the education, right? And we want more access. We want more affordability. I am thrilled to see an over-the-counter version of anything CGM, and I hope it continues. But I already have one friend who has type 2, and he knows to stick his finger. He's done this before, which is different, as you said, than most people who are going to get this. So he had two questions for me. His first was, it doesn't match the finger stick. And the second was, oh my gosh, I ate an apple and look how high my blood sugar went, right? As opposed to a cookie, which it would be the same kind of spike depending on the fruit you're eating. So I guess my question on the first is, people aren't going to see those differences because they won't be sticking their finger. But how are you explaining kind of what they should be looking out for here? Is there any education that goes along with, getting that device?
Yeah, actually, I see the Stelo product as a significant education tool. It's basically providing insight into glucose dynamics that a user's never seen before. And, I think it's the same when we talk about like the differences between finger stick meters and CGM. Any one point in time, it's highly unlikely that they perfectly match, right? Because they're basically making measurements of, a finger drop on the tip of a finger, who knows what leftover sugar from the apples on there. So there's some variability there. And I think the important thing is really looking at the CGM trace over time. And inside the Stelo app, there's actually a Learn tab that has quite a bit of content to help people understand what is glucose, how does it change throughout the day, what does it mean, what does good look like. There's a whole bunch of learning in there. And it's curated based on what people are gravitating towards. So we'll continue to update it as we learn more about what people are looking for in the Learn tab. But you're really unveiling information that people have never seen before. So it is important. But the educational aspect of it is super important. And ultimately, we're trying to show people how their habits are impacting them, helping them move towards healthier habits, and then reinforcing those healthy habits.
That's great. Okay. I have a couple of type 1 centered questions for you.
I figured you would.
So I do want to ask a couple of questions for the type 1 audience. We did an episode recently, and you and I talked about this very briefly last year about geofencing. I'm not going to re-explain it. You and I both know what the issue is. My listeners know as well about geofencing. Can you take us through what Dexcom is planning to do here? Because the community that I serve seems to have two questions. One, is this it for the foreseeable future? Can they expect geofencing so when they travel abroad, they may lose some features if they have to reboot their phone? And are you planning to publicize this in a way that they feel would be a little bit more open and let people prepare more?
Yeah, it's a really important question. Making sure users have the access to the data they need, even while traveling, is super important to us, and making sure we meet their needs. I'd say two things. One, we're very open about what it means to travel with G7. If you go to our website, you say traveling with G7, it talks all about, gives guidelines. It says, hey, if you run into a situation where you have to uninstall and reinstall your app while traveling, that can cause some issues. And our number one recommended backup there is just have a receiver. Bring a G7 receiver with you, even if you don't use it all the time. They're readily available. I think with a coupon, they're about $200. You can get a G7 receiver. That's a great way to have a backup. But that being said, we've made a lot of enhancements to this system. It was a brand new system with the G7 app. The reason it was implemented, I think you've covered before, is around ensuring that users have the features that have been approved within the place where they access their product, right? But one of the things that is important to note is that we've made a lot of enhancements to this part of the system, and we're going to continue to make those. We have a feature coming out within the next couple of months that actually is going to alleviate a lot of the issue here. And the idea is that you have to create your account in your country of residence, but if you're traveling and have to do that reinstall, it will work with your account because we cached your location when you first set up your account. It's a feature called Trusted User. And so that is going to be coming out in the next couple of months. I've always talked about that feature being in the second half of this year. And so we've been working hard to make sure it gets done. And so it is an enhancement that's coming that I think will alleviate the vast majority of the question here.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I mean, obviously, even $200 can be a barrier for a lot of people. Yeah. I think back to when Benny was little and we would lose devices and things like that. But more importantly, I think people are looking at AID systems and are worried about, will it work, will it won't, and may it not. And then, I think personally, and, I hate to take it down to the N of one, but Benny may do a semester abroad. And then if he has issues, right, what's going to happen? So the trusted user, I assume, would fix that. Okay. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And is that something that people will get a notification about? Will it be automated? I know you haven't rolled it out yet, but will we know easily?
It'll be automated. So it'll come out with that software, and then we'll update our FAQs on the website and the user knowledge base to have the new information, which will be the important thing. You have to create your account in the country of residence. And then after that, you don't have to, you won't have the same issues.
All right. Not to belabor the point, but if I have already established my account, will I have to check a box, do a thing, redo it after this?
No, you don't have to redo it. No, it's basically based on your previous one. Yeah. That's super important because you want your account and all of that previous data.
Yeah. Let me tell you, having my kid change over, become a legal adult, and making sure that everything is properly in its place as he replaces me on all these accounts has been quite the adventure. I hate to always ask what's next and what's new because I feel like, I don't want to move ahead too far from these recent and important changes. We were asking about Direct to Watch for so long now. It's here. All right, next, what's up? But I did, right? But I did talk to Abbott recently about ketone monitoring. And we've talked about this before, but this seems to be so important as we move forward and hear more about medications where people may want to use in conjunction with their diabetes medications, but have to look out for ketones in a way that perhaps we have thought of it in the type 1 community for sickness, emergency, things like that in a very different way. Can you kind of update us on ketone monitoring?
Sure. I think you hit it on the head there where in terms of, within type 1 diabetes or type 2, where you're looking at high glucose causing DKA, a glucose sensor is the best way to prevent that or detect that, right? Because you basically can alert someone that their glucose is going high, you're out of range. We've seen that in our clinical studies where within SMBG treated groups, so people doing finger sticks, there are incidences of DKA. In the CGM group, this large study that we did, we didn't see any DKA because they were in sensors and they're managed glucose. But you bring up an important point around potentials for euglycemic DKA and ketones and having to monitor that. Ketones is an area that I think that has its place, like subcutaneous ketone sensing, and something that we are investigating and working on. We've been working on it for quite a while. We've been keeping our product development there a little bit closer to the vest than our competitor, but rest assured that it is, we believe, part of the story here.
Great. And then I also want to ask you about the Dexcom G7 replacement. When I spoke at, I think it was at ADA. Yeah, when I talked to Kevin Sayre at ADA, we talked about this concern in the community that 3 replacements a year, for no reason, and that's it. And then there were a lot of concerns about if it doesn't stick, why is that my fault, et cetera. And he said, you all were working on it, would probably revisit that. Can you speak to the replacement policy?
Sure. It's super important to ensure our customers have the sensors they need. So I think that's priority number one for us. Number two is any sensor that fails gets replaced. And so I think the question here is we're talking about what constitutes a failure, right? And so one of the things that we looked at was we looked at all of our data over time of users. And we found that if we take away the actual sensor failures that can happen, right? We've all experienced them. If you take those actual sensor failures away and you look at things like sensors falling off, people knocking them off, taking them off early, we found that the vast majority of folks get three or less of those a year. What we put in place was a guideline around, if you don't need three or more, we're not going to basically replace a bunch of sensors that we don't need to replace. But it's important to us, cases like with pediatrics, where if there is a situation where they need more than three replacements, we have an escalation process where we can deal with those cases on a case-by-case basis. Our technical support is well-trained in how to do that. The balance here is trying to notify our users that, hey, don't expect that if you're not spending a lot of time making sure your sensors stay on, that we're just going to keep replacing everything all the time, right? That's not a fair situation to be in. But there's the balance of some people do have challenges and we want to be able to address those. And so we've adapted how we're communicating the policy too with our teams and just training better and making it understood. But we want to make sure that people have the sensors they need. There is a process for those.
Yeah.
The other thing too is working with those users who are having challenges, because there are lots of things you can do to help ensure sensors stay adhered and continue to function. And so just kind of highlighting the importance of that is part of this program.
I don't know if you have this off the top of your head or can share it, but I'd be curious that three or fewer replacements, that three or fewer, not failures, but slide off, get knocked off, what that number is for the pediatric population. Because I would imagine on average, it's probably just a little higher because kids are bananas.
It's a little higher for peds, which is why we consider peds a specific case. And so that's an area where the team's been well trained in, okay, we're talking about a pediatric customer here. There's a higher likelihood that they're going to need more of these. And so that's why we've made that update.
Is there a similar policy for Stelo?
Stelo is a little bit different in that users actually are interacting with our digital website bot where they can basically type in, hey, I need a sensor replacement. And it's because it's not for pediatrics, right? This is an adult-only product. It's a little bit different. And so that one, it actually, on a case-by-case basis, we're evaluating, which sensors failed, which ones didn't, and then how we replace them. It is important there is a serial number required to be able to replace Stelos. So for Stelo users, it's important to keep track of your sensor serial numbers.
Excellent. We're almost to the end of this. Got to let you go in a minute. But you're at this big conference where lots of news is made. Any studies, anything you're revealing? I should have asked you this first. We went to space first. But is there anything that, before I let you go, that you would want to share from the conference?
There is quite a bit of new data being presented here. But the way that I'd summarize it is a lot of it is around the benefits of CGM in the type 2 population, both insulin users and non-insulin users. One of the things that we're dedicated to is continuing to build the evidence around the benefit of CGM. There's still, countries around the globe where we're seeking access for insulin users that they don't yet have reimbursement for CGM. And then as we look beyond the insulin users, there's also significant benefit to CGM. And the CGM combined with any of the glucose lowering therapies, GLP-1s, SGLT2s, and insulin, of course, you combine those, you get better outcomes. We know that inherently, but we're just producing more and more data that shows it.
Great. Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to try Stelo probably myself and to see, what the impact is on the type 2 community and pre-diabetic community. So thanks for joining me. I'm sure we'll talk again soon and safe travels home.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
More information on Stelo and Dexcom over at diabetes-connections.com. Just click on the Type 2 show. Like I said, there is a lot more information in the history of this, and Dexcom does do a great job of having a good FAQ section and videos and teaching. And we have talked to them for years and years. So I will link up all of the Dexcom episodes, but I got to warn you, it might take you more than a day to go through them. But I think it's interesting to do a deep dive that way. It's hard to overstate how much CGM technology has changed the way diabetes is managed, whether or not people dose insulin. As you heard Jake talking about, they really are interested to see what you folks with type 2 or pre-diabetes get out of Stelo, how you use it, and they are prepared to move those levers and change the way you see it on your phone depending on what information you find useful. So if you start using it, let me know, and definitely let them know what you find valuable. Thanks to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.